Welcome back. We're going to jump into this second segment and talk about, cost and production and move forward with our understanding of Chapter 8. And we're going to jumpstart this. We're going to talk about a production function. And basically, the authors have defined their production function as the relationship between factors of production and the output of the firm. Production is the process of transforming inputs into outputs. And at the end of the day, the economists aren't so concerned with what goes on in kind of the black box that is the production function. They are more concerned, or economists like myself, we're more concerned with the outputs and the number of scarce resources. And we're going to get into that in a few minutes. But what goes on in the black box, and if you think about a production function for a firm, it kind of goes back, at least to me, goes back to the technology and the entrepreneurship. What is in the process that firm uses? And every firm has a production function that they go through, and they try to maximize that output coming out of that production function. And they're using entrepreneurial, activities. They're using, and again, technology. When we talk about this as an economist, we're not talking about, really computer chips and iPhones and iPads as much as we are the process with which a firm transforms inputs into outputs. And if you think about it, yes, let's say you got up this morning and you decided that, on the way to school, you're going to stop in at Starbucks. You're going to stop in at Starbucks and you're going to grab a cup of coffee and something to eat. And as you go into Starbucks and you go up to the individual, taking orders, you tell them what kind of coffee you want, and if you want a muffin or one of their sandwiches or something, you make your order, or you place your order, you pay for it, and you go stand in the corner and wait for your order to be prepared. And once that order is placed, the production functions that they use at Starbucks magically start. You've got somebody over here fixing your sandwich or your piece of cake or your muffin or whatever it is you bought to eat. Then you've got a barista over here that's going through the steps to get you that special cup of Starbucks coffee that you have ordered. And from an economic perspective, or from the economist perspective, we're not so much concerned about what processes they go through to get that cup of coffee or to get that sandwich or to get that muffin. They are more, we're more concerned with how many cups of coffee they can generate, how many muffins they can sell, and, based on the factors of production. And if it's labor, we're looking at, the number of warm bodies they've got in there, and, are they efficient, and are they producing the maximum number of cups of coffee or the maximum number of cups of tea, or at the end of the day, whatever that total product is that Starbucks generates, we're more concerned with that. And if you actually step back and think about it, a production function, as we say, it takes inputs and turns it into output. I got up this morning for breakfast. I decided, I've been, seeing my doctor, and I've been reading on the internet, and everybody's saying, oatmeal's great for you, helps you reduce your cholesterol. So I've been giving it a shot. I personally don't particularly care for oatmeal, but again, it, from a healthy lifestyle, healthy living, long life, consciousness. I mean, I decided I'd give it a shot. And so I have a theoretical production function I go through. I've got inputs of this production process. I've got a bowl, and I've got a spoon, and I've got, I think it's a third of a cup of raw oats. I've got 2/3 of a cup of water. I've got some brown sugar, because I can't go the taste of oatmeal without something in it to make it palatable, at least from my perspective. And I know when I put it in the microwave, I know exactly I'm going to microwave it on high for 4 minutes. I'm going to take it out, stir it a little. I'm going to put brown sugar on it. I'm going to let it cool just a little to the point that I can eat it, then I'm going to sit down, I'm going to pour a glass of milk, and I'm going to sit down, and that's going to be breakfast. That's my production function for taking inputs and turn them into outputs. Starbucks has a production function, McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, all the restaurants in downtown Nashville, they've all got these, implicit or definitive production functions that they go through that they think they have mastered and have built efficiency in these production functions, because like economists, they are trying to maximize output at the same time they're trying to minimize cost. So a little different from my perspective, and fixing my bowl of oatmeal. I'm not even, I'm not even maximizing utility when I eat that bowl of oatmeal. But from a consumer's perspective, I should be fixing breakfast that would maximize my utility. I don't get a lot of pleasure out of eating oatmeal. There may be some benefits. I mean, at least the physicians say that, and the internet says it, and your medical journals all tout the value of oatmeal. So I'm somewhat maximizing benefits, but I'm not sure I'm maximizing the satisfaction. At least taste-wise, I'm not maximizing satisfaction. But on the firm side, they are trying to maximize output. In return, they're hoping they're going to maximize profits. And in maximizing outputs and trying to maximize profits, they're trying to, on the other side, trying to minimize costs. So, and again, one thing that I mentioned in the first segment, I want to make sure I mention it again. If you remember when we were in chapter 7 and talking about, consumer choices, at the end of the day, we actually generated the rationale in chapter 7 to describe the rationale of why the demand curve is downward sloping. And we used marginal utility, we used substitution effect, income effect, and we ended up at the end of the day, actually, at least I hope you did, understood why all of those pulled together drive the consumer's demands curve, and it's, sloping down, with the exception, and when we talked about that Giffen good, which I'm not sure they really exist, but anyway, I guess there is a potential there at some point that you can have an upward sloping demand curve. But to me, it's far and few between. Now, put your demand curve and your consumption aside, and now start thinking about production and the firm, and we're going to start using the concepts we learn in chapter 8 to help build the what. If the tools we learned in 7 on the consumer side built the demand curve, what we learn on the firm side is going to help build the supply curve. So just keep that in mind. So we're shifting gears into the supply side. And want to talk just a few minutes about the total product curve. And again, if you're in the short run, what do we say last segment about the short run? All the factors of production are fixed except you allow one to vary. And the one that most often is varied is labor, because it's the easiest of the factors of production to open the spigot on, shut the spigot off, manage. It's just one that's easy to serve as a variable. And the total product curve, the definition they give you in the text, it's a graph that shows the quantities that can be obtained from different amounts of variable factors of production. In our case, we're going to look at labor, and assuming that other factors of production are fixed. Capital stock or capital equipment's fixed, natural resources, and in most cases, that's going to be land is fixed. Production process or the technology is fixed, and entrepreneurship's fixed. So the other 4 factors of production are fixed, and we're going to vary the labor piece of it. And because of the way that the total product curve acts, it is a curve that is nonlinear. And the slope of the total product curve is actually rise over run, change in y divided by the change in x, which, since we are varying labor is the one that's allowed to vary, we're going to plot it down here on the horizontal of the x-axis, and we're going to plot the quantity or the output on the y-axis. So if the slope is a change in y over x, that implies that the common example is going to be the change in quantity divided by the change in labor. And so now we go from the total product curve, we're going to bounce down now to the marginal product. And that's the amount by which output rises with an additional unit of a variable factor. Okay, so if the slope of the total product curve is the change in quantity over the change in labor, then the marginal product is a similar slope. It's going to be change in quantity over the change in labor, because the amount by which output rises with an additional unit of variable factor. So think about the example of going into Starbucks this morning. I don't know how many warm bodies they had in Starbucks, but they probably had somebody working the cash register, probably had somebody working, I think they microwave most of their sandwiches and things. So they probably had somebody over here, manning the microwave. They may have had, one or maybe had one person, making the coffee, the little barista sitting here making coffee and tea. And they may have had one person kind of over here handing out the goods and services that you're purchasing, maybe cleaning up some areas or something. So let's say they had 4 people in there. So if you think about Starbucks, then you want to think about it from a marginal product, and the marginal product is the amount by which output rises with an additional unit of a variable factor. So that means the marginal product of labor, if it's that variable factor, it's the amount by which output rises with an additional unit of labor. And most Starbucks have figured out, based on economic analysis and very sophisticated economic analysis, but at the end of the day, it's pretty straightforward. They figured out that they may need X bodies during the breakfast run. They may be, maybe they need fewer bodies, say from 11 o'clock to say 3 in the afternoon, maybe. And then they may get another little bump and run, maybe like 5 or 6 o'clock, people getting off work, they stop in at Starbucks, get them a cup of coffee to, drink on the way home or something. So they figured out that during those different hours or times during the day, how many bodies they need. But when you walk into Starbucks and you're looking around, you think to yourself, they've got microwave dude, cash register dude, coffee maker dude, and somebody that's handing out maybe the goods and services. So they've got 4 warm bodies in there. What would that marginal product of labor look like if they added a 5th body, or if they added a 6th body? And that's what we're talking about the marginal product of labor. What is the change in quantity divided by the change in labor? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about marginal product of labor. And if the slope of the total product curve is change in quantity over change in labor, and if the change in quantity over the change in labor is the marginal product of labor, then the slope of the total product curve is the marginal product of labor. So that's how you get to that slope. And again, we're going to use some of this a little later on, some of the other segments. So we've gone, total product curve. Now we've talked about the marginal product curve. Now we're going to talk about the average product of labor. And that we'll tie it back to Starbucks. So it's the ratio of output to the number of units of labor. So the average product of labor is basically total quantity, total units of output, divided by the total units of labor. So if they sell 100 cups of coffee, well, they probably wouldn't even stay in business for 100 cups of coffee, but we use it because it's easy to do the math on it. So if they sell in a day 100 cups of coffee and they average 4 FTEs throughout the day, then the average product of labor is 25. If they bring on another person and so they bring on a 5th person, and it doesn't rise above 100 cups of coffee, then the average product of labor is only 20. So it's fairly straightforward to calculate the average product of labor. Or if they took and they brought on a fifth person, and that 100 went to 150 cups of coffee a day, then your average product of labor bounces up to 30. So it's easy to calculate, marginal product of labor, average product of labor, and the average product is the output per unit of the variable factor. And it could be any variable factor, but we just choose labor because it is as a typical economic model. It helps us to, I guess, simplify the complex world we live in. So mathematically, it's really easy to calculate, marginal product of labor, average product of labor, and then to kind of wind and bring all this together, they talk about, at least in the text, the marginal product is the slope of the total product curve, which we've talked about a few minutes ago. And it says, as marginal product rises as the slope of the total product curve increases. That makes sense. Marginal product decreases as the slope of the total product curve starts to flatten out. And then marginal product equals 0 when the total product curve hits its maximum. So if you go back to the textbook, they do actually a pretty decent job of graphing this out and making it so it makes sense to you. And then they start. So they've got the relationship and what happens to the marginal product and the total product curve. So they've explained that for everybody. And then they jump down and they talk about the marginal product curve and the average product curve. And so marginal product intersects the average product curve at its maximum point. So that when marginal product is above the average product is rising. If marginal product is below the average product curve, then average product is falling. Again, you're talking about marginal product. It's the increase in output for a given unit of a variable factor. In our circumstance, we're talking about labor, and the students sometimes get really confused when we're talking about marginal product and average product. So marginal product, talking about change. Average product, we're just talking about the division. So marginal product's change in quantity divided by change in labor. Average product is just the quantity divided by the change in labor. And so hopefully that helps differentiate those two. And you think about maybe you're a baseball fan and you've got somebody that's averaging 300. You've got a batter that's averaging 300. And so that's just, average, hits per plate appearances. I guess, it's the way they calculate that. But and there are some nuances, but we won't get into those nuances. But the batter comes up and they've got a game today and he plays and he goes, goes 3 for 3. That's pretty good marginal, pretty much good marginal increase. And so the marginal increase it's above so 3 for 3 is, you're batting 1,000 or you're batting 100% or however you want to look at it. But so it's because it's above the average. Then when he comes to bat tomorrow at his first at bat, that marginal, and again, it's going to depend on how many times he's been at bat, but that marginal or the average his batting average, why they call it a batting average, his batting average is going to be a little above 300. If he had gone over 3 yesterday, his batting average today, when he came to the plate, is going to be a little less than 300. Same thing that happens with you with your grades. If you're, plugging along here with, let's say let's say fall semester of your sophomore, you make it through your freshman year and you're in a grade point average is 3. If you end up with a grade point average of like 3.5 for the fall semester, because that marginal grade average is above, your grade average. It's going to boost that it's going to boost that grade average above. If you start out your fall semester with a grade average of 3 and you end up with a 2.5, it's going to pull your grade average down. So, it's the same concept, whether you're talking about a firm, whether you're talking about baseball players' batting average, talking about your grades. That's the relationship that you're going to find between marginal and, the margin or marginal change and your grade, any particular average. So just at the end of the day, just make sure we take with us that the marginal product of labor is the change in quantity over the change in labor. The average product of labor is just the quantity divided by the number of units of labor. And I'm going to stop there, and when I come back, we're going to talk about going to talk about marginal returns. So next time we get together, we'll jump into the marginal returns aspect. Talk to you later. Thanks for joining.